One of the problems with the Cherokee was that the driver's side door would just glide open and fall shut by itself. And that told me that this door check strap wasn't working like it's supposed to. And I couldn't figure out why. It's a pretty simple device. But when I went to the junkyard, I got another one out of a postal Jeep. Got the left-hand side one because I figured, hey, a postal Jeep, they're probably not opening the left door too much, so it shouldn't be worn out. Pulled it out and replaced it, and this is the old one from this one. And what's happened is there's a spring that wraps around top and bottom post of these dowels here, and it broke, and it's gone. So this thing has no spring tension on it, so this bar is supposed to stay tight against the roller there, and it does not. I'm actually holding this upside down. So that's what happens there, is that this thing just flops around now and doesn't do its job. So that's junk. And then you can replace them pretty easily. The pin, just drive that up from the bottom. They actually come out a lot easier than you might think. And then there's the two 10mm nuts that hold it. And it's just a matter of fishing the thing out of the door, which can be fun. You have to go in through the speaker hole. The wiring harness is always in the way. You can wedge it between the wiring harness and the door inner panel and get it in and out that way. It's a little fiddly, but it's not terribly difficult. So, simple fix, part from the junkyard, discontinued from Jeep, so you're not going to buy a new one, like everything. But simple problem, simple solution. One thing I should mention is that the left and right side are the same part number, so they are reversible from side to side. You just flip them upside down. However, the rear doors are different from the front doors, so you can't do that if you have a four-door. So these fender flares, of course, the studs all snapped off, so what I did was I actually welded bolts to the bracket, because you have to put the brackets on the flare first to really get these on. So a little spot weld on each bolt. Hopefully that holds it, and then we can put this flare back on. I also repainted the rear bumper. I'm going to do the same to the front bumper. And that was just a scuff and spray it with spray paint. And the paint I'm using is Rust-Oleum. But the key is you want to get the satin finish. You don't want to get gloss black, because gloss is too shiny. It's going to look kind of cheap and ridiculous. And you don't really want flat. I have flat too, but that's not for that. Flat's too dull, and flat paint's generally porous too, so it'll allow moisture to get through. So I like to use this satin black or a semi-gloss black, either one. They're both available from Rust-Oleum, and you get that 2X brand paint, which is paint and primer in one, they say, so you only have to put as many coats on as you need to color. One of the problems with this particular Cherokee, and one of the reasons I was initially a little hesitant to buy it, is because the spring perches on the front axle were rusted. And I realized I was going to have to do something about that. And I was kind of hoping I could just maybe patch them up with a couple pieces of metal or something, but they're too far gone. And I just saw this as I was greasing the front end, that the passenger side spring has completely collapsed past the spring mount because it's so rusty, it just disintegrated. So these are going to have to be replaced, and unfortunately they get welded onto the axle tube, and it's probably not something I'm going to do myself. I'm just not that comfortable with something that's kind of a significant mounting position. Although it is a spring and a shock, it's not really holding it to the car necessarily, but having exhibited my welding skills in the quarter panel, I don't think I'm probably qualified to do this. So they do make replacement spring perches, which can be welded on, which is great, and I'm going to get a pair of those, but going to have to outsource that repair, I'm afraid, instead of doing it here in the shop. All right, so we took the carpeting out because we're taking the center console out to get the dash out anyway, and one of the things that I always worry about on these vehicles is rust in the floor. Well, we got some, although it's not that bad. But the carpet, the padding under the carpet was just soaking with water. I mean, this is standing water in here that drained out of there while I was getting the carpet out and squeezing that insulation together. So we've got some holes that we're going to have to fix. And then clean all this up. And I'm going to take off these silver heat shields or whatever the heck they are and get rid of those. But this back floor is fine. It's solid. It just has rust starting on it. But we're going to have to take all that out and wire wheel it down and then treat it and then paint it with a product like Pour 15. I use Rust Bullet. That's what I have. So I'll probably put that down. But driver's side's not bad. But you can see the seat mount is pretty ugly on that side, and it's starting to get ugly on this side. And of course the rear bolts both snapped off on the outside. The inside studs are okay. And then on the other side I lost one of the bolts at the front. So I'm going to have to do some drilling out of bolts, which is always a delight. But got some work to do in here, as you can see. Always, I would recommend always when you buy one of these as a project, take the carpeting out and see what's there, because the underside of this thing looks good. There was like one or two little spots you could see was kind of bubbling, and that's probably where those were. But untreated, this is going to be a floor replacement in a couple of years. So you definitely want to take the time, pull the carpet out. It's really not that hard to do, especially if you're doing a dash removal, and see what you wind up with. So I'm going to dry this out and then get started on taking care of the floor. I should mention that the carpet's probably going to be junk. The mouse fur on the back, what I call mouse fur, it's the padding or the insulation. It's soaked through completely. It's stinky. Probably not going to be able to save it. The carpet's not brilliant, although it's not torn or anything that terrible. It could probably be cleaned, but we're not going to put the carpet back in right away because I want to make sure that there are no more leaks in this thing before I put carpet back in it again. So if I do carpet, it's probably going to be an aftermarket kit. I don't think I'm going to try to reuse what's there. All right, time for a rust report. So on the driver's side, we've got one pretty good sized hole right there, as you can see. And then there's a blister that's turning into a hole back here. But that's kind of it for the driver's side, really pretty good. That adhesive heat or sound deadener with the foil backing on it, I peeled the edges up and there's fresh paint around the whole perimeter of it. So I'm not going to peel those up because everything looks good there. And underneath that's probably not damaged, but passenger side is not very good. So every place I've circled here has pinholes. We do that by shining a light up from the bottom. You can see light coming through, and there's just pinholes everywhere. As you can see all through there. And then in the back we've got some spots here and there. It's not too bad, but then you get into the back here and there's a whole bunch right there. So really, if this was a restoration, this floor pan should probably be replaced. If you're slamming it together just to have it together and maybe just off-road it, nothing wrong with a couple of self-tappers and some license plates, right? But I'm going to try to do something in between that. These bigger holes, we're going to cut those out and weld some patches in. But I'm kind of concerned about how far back I got to go to get to good weldable metal for some of these areas. So I'm not quite sure right now how I'm going to attack this. But I am not inclined to put floor pans in. I don't think they're that bad. They're not great, but where there are not pinholes, it's very solid. So I'm reluctant to just cut it all out and replace it because that's a big, big job. And again, this is not a restoration. At any rate, I'm going to next treat all the rust spots with a rust neutralizer. And we hand brush that on. You can buy a spray-on product too, but I like to brush it in. Make sure I get everything. And we'll let that dry, and then we'll assess what we're going to do. Just in case you wondered what product I use this. It's not necessarily the best, but it's available pretty much at every hardware store you go to. It's about $9 or $10 for the bottle, and it goes pretty far. I maybe used a quarter, if that, of this bottle to do the floors. And I just put it on with a cheapy disposable paintbrush. I buy these on Amazon, 50 of them in a box or something for like, probably less than $1 a piece. Then you don't feel bad about throwing them away when you're done with them. Same with the acid brushes. So this is the product I use. You can use whatever you like. Like I said, there's not necessarily, this isn't necessarily the best one, but you can get it anywhere. All right, on to the floor pans. Now, when I bought this Jeep, I looked at the underside pretty carefully, and the floor pans underneath looked really good. I saw one or two spots where it looked like it might be starting to come through, but that was about it. So the assumption was that the floors in this thing were actually pretty good. So after cleaning this all out and getting the carpeting out and treating all the visible rust, I went around with the body hammer and the pick end and just whacked away on the floor, try to find some soft spots. And yeah, we found some soft spots and made some holes. So the passenger side is kind of randomly all over the place, kind of ugly. This section here is pretty good, but in the back here we've got a couple little issues there. And then on the driver's side, of course, we've got just the front, because the back is really good. But the front's a bit of a mess. It's a bit of a train wreck. And then, of course, we've got the seat mount, which is completely gone. So I'm going to make that. So, more welding and patching. Hooray. So I'm going to start on the driver's side first because I want to try to get that seat mount made and take care of that, and then we'll come over to this side and try to figure out what I'm going to do here because it's kind of scattered. That's a lot more one section over there. And again, if this was a real restoration type thing, we'd buy a floor pan and at least put the front section in there. I'm not going to do that with this. This is a quick and dirty, just make it tight and solid again. And this floor pan's probably going to continue to rust, and maybe in another 5 years it'll be trash and we'll need to replace the whole thing. But for now, we're going to try to band-aid it and see how it holds up. Kind of an experiment, really. Getting to this point to do something to it again isn't that bad. So if we can get more time out of it this way, and we don't have to buy floor pans and cut all that out and deal with welding to the rocker and removing all the seam sealer and all that extra effort, then hooray for us. So follow along as we put Humpty back together again. And for our final segment, we'll talk a little bit about the carpeting. I took this outside and gave it a good scrubbing. I had some carpet cleaning stuff I bought at Ollie's 10 years ago that seems to do a pretty good job on this stuff. But as you can see, it's not clean. It's just not gross. I got a lot of the coffee stains that were spilled down alongside the seat out, but all these rust spots and some of the heavier grime didn't really come out. Now maybe if we took it to a pressure washer and really blasted the thing, it might get better, but I don't really care because this carpet is covered by floor mats and the seats and everything. You really don't see very much of the carpet. The only part you really see is over the transmission tunnel, and that doesn't look too bad. So versus buying new carpet for this thing, and it's being used as a tool, not as a vehicle to impress people, this will be fine. I think we'll be okay. So just letting that dry because it's saturated. I did cut off all of the mouse fur from the backside except over the hump. That we want to keep the transmission tunnel heat out of the interior. But all of the stuff on the floor side has been removed because it's probably never going to dry, and even if it did, it likely stinks now because it's been in moisture for, years. So we're just going to put it back in this way. I'm not a big fan of the stick-on sound deadening pads like the Dynamat because it creates a non-breathable barrier on top of the floor. And if any moisture gets under there, it's just going to rust worse than this carpet stuff made it. So I don't do that. I'm not going to put anything in. I'm just going to put this carpet back down. It's got the carpet, it's got floor mats, and it's got plastic floor mats that were on top of that. So if I put all that back in, it's still giving you some sound deadening properties. It should be fine. I mean, we're not driving this thing on the highway across the country or anything. So that's it. We're going to salvage this carpet. It's not the greatest, but it's not the worst. We can make do with it. So we'll see you again in the next installment as we attack the floors and try to get those straightened out. Thanks for watching.